Word traveled fast across the globe. A new pope had been chosen. The basilica's bells rang out, and his name echoed on television, cell phones, and radios across continents. But for those familiar with certain ancient records, this event signaled more than a shift in religious leadership. There was something subtler, something stirring beneath the surface. A curious detail caught the attention of a few. Decades ago, a man often regarded as one of the most gifted seers of modern times offered a prophecy that now seems eerily relevant. Edgar Cayce, in one of his lesser-known readings, spoke of a moment when a shift in spiritual leadership would precede a much deeper transformation. Symbolic as it seemed, he described it as the beginning of a greater unfolding, one that would most affect those over 60. That portion of his work remained mostly ignored. Perhaps it felt too abstract, too distant. But now, with the emergence of a new spiritual figure, his words take on a haunting clarity. Cayce suggested that such a moment would mark the beginning of a more delicate phase for humanity, not a time of catastrophe, but of deep inner recalibration, a reckoning with values, meaning, and emotional strength. To some, that may sound vague, but for those paying close attention, the signs are already visible. If you're still with us, consider subscribing and liking this video, because here we go beyond headlines. We explore the deeper undercurrents that most never see. Cayce's prophecy didn't end with the arrival of new leadership. He said it would be followed by a choice, particularly for older generations, to remain paralyzed by fear or awaken to a broader view of life. He foresaw a time when traditional beliefs would be challenged, not through attack, but through a quiet internal shift, as millions would begin to ask, what truly matters? What lies beyond this life? And why am I here? These questions, he said, would unsettle many, but for those open to the experience, they would become a doorway to peace, a peace found only after a long life, lived and deeply examined. And so with the appearance of a new pope, those old prophecies begin to feel less like folklore and more like a quiet call. For Cayce, this was not a time of fear, but of illumination. He said that many elders would sense the change instinctively, not with their eyes, but through an inner knowing, as though time itself were urging a more honest response. The foundations of faith, once taken for granted, would begin to feel uncertain, not in rejection, but in renewal. Spirituality would not be discarded, but rediscovered, redefined. This transition, Cayce believed, would be a bridge between worlds, the visible and the invisible, the conclusion of one chapter and the beginning of another. Those who crossed that bridge with openness would become quiet beacons for the young, not through advice, but through presence, through a calm that comes only from within. He emphasized this wouldn't be a sudden shift, but a gradual softening, like the fading light at dusk, where day slowly yields to night. And he pointed to a specific kind of figure, not by name, but by essence, connected to the Vatican, who would embody the energy of renewal. When such a leader appeared, balanced, compassionate, yet unyielding, that would signal the start of this new cycle. And now, looking at the profile of the chosen pope, the alignment is uncanny. This isn't about blind belief. Cayce never advocated for that. He urged clarity. He invited people to look deeper with the eyes of the soul, not just the senses. In this new phase, the greatest challenges would not be external, but internal. Cayce said the core struggle for many elders would not be illness or decline, but the quiet ache of lost meaning, the disorienting sense of no longer fitting in. He saw this not as a curse, but as an invitation. Aging, he said, would become a final call to transformation. Those who answered it would touch a deeper wisdom, not by changing religions or discarding beliefs, but by piercing the veil of what had always gone unquestioned. He warned that this awakening would be uncomfortable. Many would feel a spiritual solitude, a sensation that the once familiar now felt hollow. Sleepless nights would come, full of reflection, as long-held certainties faded away. But this would not be an ending. It would be the beginning of something more real, a homecoming to the self, to the soul, to the natural rhythm of existence. In this light, the arrival of a new pope isn't just a ceremonial change, but a cosmic signal, a silent request for those over 60 to reclaim their place. Cayce insisted that modern culture had forgotten something vital, that the wisdom of elders is crucial for balance. But for that to happen, elders must recognize their own worth. He said too many withdraw, believing their purpose has passed. But this, he said, was one of the greatest lies of our time. The spiritual future of humanity, he believed, depends on the clarity and awakening of the elder generations. And though the new pope may not know it, his emergence marks the spark of this process. His leadership will stir questions, not just about faith and mortality, but about why we're really here. This shift begins quietly, but its ripples will grow. At its core, Cayce's vision pointed to a healing, a reunion of spirit and daily life. After 60, he said, we are finally free to live truthfully as social masks fall and what remains is essence. But to see clearly, we must first accept our past, our missteps, our mischances, and the life still waiting to be lived. In this reading, the new pope becomes a mirror, an elder stepping into leadership, inviting others to lead themselves with compassion and purpose. This isn't about religion, it's about consciousness. And for Cayce, consciousness was the only true path to soul transformation. He saw aging not as decline, but as the culmination of life, when spirit is most ready to grasp what really matters. He recommended simple practices, silence, contemplation, and reflection, not to escape the world, but to reorder our inner one. The Pope's election, in this sense, becomes a reminder. It's not too late to begin again. Those over 60 carry what youth lacks: time lived, lessons learned, a memory that can light the road ahead. This power is often invisible, even to those who hold it. Cayce warned that society teaches the elderly to fade away, to stay quiet, to feel outdated. But the spirit, he said, ripens with age. And with maturity comes the ability to guide, not by instruction, but by example. This takes courage, to break from habit, to see ourselves clearly, to forgive the past, and welcome the unknown. And perhaps most profound of all, he said, it doesn't take a movement. Even one awakened elder can shift the atmosphere. The Pope's arrival is but one spark. This process is personal, silent, and transformative. Cayce gave no formulas, only gentle signs meant for those ready to notice. In a world spinning with distractions, sometimes the most important truths come in a whisper. Most will see a new pope as just another headline, but for those attuned to the deeper rhythms, this is something more. Cayce taught that true spiritual signals rarely shout, they whisper, and only those at peace can hear them. That's why he emphasized emotional preparation, not to wait for the end, but to embrace what's essential. Many elders carry regrets and unfinished stories. Cayce saw these not as weights, but as keys, a chance to turn pain into wisdom, and a new spiritual leader could serve as a moment of collective release, not because of doctrine, but because of the energy of renewal. He urged elders to reflect on their past with compassion, not to erase it, but to understand it. That, to him, was true spiritual rebirth. Not everyone will accept this invitation. Many will resist, clinging to what no longer serves. But those who awaken will not need to teach, only to be. Presence is enough. Serenity is a lighthouse. And in an age of uncertainty, that stillness is more powerful than words. Cayce's most adamant point: it is never too late to begin. The soul doesn't age, only the body does. Your mission might arise at 70, 80, or later, but to see it, you must be willing to look inward. It's not about grandeur. Sometimes a quiet kindness, a listening ear, or tending to a garden can carry more meaning than 1,000 speeches. This is your silent power. The Pope is not a savior. He is a reminder, a signal that change begins within. Cayce did not believe in fate. He believed in free will and the soul's capacity to grow, to forgive, and to awaken, no matter the age. Those who've endured, who've witnessed the world evolve and break, carry a sensitivity that youth has yet to earn. And that sensitivity can either harden into grief or soften into wisdom. Too many live now with a quiet ache, a weight they can't explain. Cayce called it a spiritual ache, a signal from the soul. And the only way to hear it is through silence and the willingness to listen. This new pope has arrived just as millions over 60 are seeking purpose, not always consciously, but in the silent spaces of their lives. That's no coincidence. Cayce believed that global events, especially those tied to ancient institutions, stir the collective soul. And elders feel it most, not because they're weak, but because they're closer to what's real. Those who meet this feeling with curiosity will find what they've been looking for. Aging, Cayce said, is a return to the essence. When the world quiets and time takes on new meaning, the soul comes forward. So don't turn away. Don't get lost in noise. The new pope might seem distant, but his presence is a reminder. Your faith, not in a church, not in a system, but in your own soul, is ready to be reborn. And perhaps this phase of life is not the end, but the beginning of your richest chapter. All it takes is the courage to open your eyes, feel fully, and start again, as many times as needed. Because true awakening doesn't happen in the noise, it happens in the stillness, after the striving ends, when the soul is finally ready to be heard. And perhaps that's the quiet gift hidden inside this new papal chapter. Not a change in doctrine, but a shift in perception. Not just for the masses, but for you, personally. A moment to pause, to exhale, to feel what's been trying to reach you through the fog of routine. This is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been beneath the layers. The mystics knew it, the sages lived it, and Cayce saw it too, that the elder years are not a descent, but a sacred return. Back to simplicity, back to authenticity, back to truth. He spoke of a time when those over 60 would become the quiet architects of a spiritual renaissance. Not through effort, but by their very presence. Not by shouting to be heard, but by radiating a peace that others can feel. Because something powerful happens when a soul finally drops the mask, lets go of performance, and stands bare and real. That kind of person doesn't need a pulpit. Their life becomes the sermon. And now, with the dawn of new spiritual leadership, you are being invited to see yourself not as someone fading, but as someone ripening, ready, seasoned, capable of offering the kind of wisdom that only comes through time, loss, and love. So ask yourself, what part of me have I been withholding? What truth have I silenced to keep the peace, to avoid discomfort, to play the role? And what if now is the perfect time to let it all go? To speak, to create, to remember. You've walked through fire, you've endured storms, and now you stand not as someone broken, but as someone forged. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's what Cayce saw. Not just prophecy, but potential. Not a future dictated by fate, but shaped by the conscious awakening of those who dare to live the last chapter as their most honest one. This isn't the time to shrink. It's the time to stretch into the fullness of your experience, into the depth of your spirit, into the calm power that only comes from knowing who you truly are. You've earned this wisdom, not through books, but through living. And now, as a new pope quietly takes his seat, a deeper throne is being offered to you, the throne within. Sit there, own it, lead from it, because someone somewhere is waiting for your light to show them the way. And you may never know who they are. You may never hear the words, but your energy, your courage, your stillness, they matter. They ripple, they heal, they teach, even in silence, especially in silence. So take this moment, not as coincidence, but as confirmation. You are not fading, you are arriving. And this life, the one you're living now, is not an afterthought. It's the crown, the culmination, the call. Step into it fully, not with fear, but with grace. Because as Cayce knew, this is not the end. This is where the soul begins to speak, and the world is finally ready to listen.